Friends, welcome to the Purpose to Profit Academy, the Expert Speaker Series. I'm very excited and honored to introduce you to Jessica Kishpa. Jessica is a holistic nutritionist and mind, body, and eating coach. Jessica, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's so great to have you. And today we're talking about self-care for high-achieving business women owners. Now, Jessica, I work and you work with a lot of entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs who prioritize hustle in their daily lives, right? We are taught to be productive. We are taught to create big to-do lists, but self-care is not a priority for us. Could you tell us, please, we know the importance of self-care, yet we're not wired to prioritize it in our daily busy lives. How do you incorporate self-care in a, easy way so we actually prioritize it? And maybe we start our day with self-care. Could you talk more about that?
How do I personally, or how do I help others?
Yeah, if you want to share your story, that would be amazing. And maybe you can give some advice on how to really make it a priority for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the word priority is actually really key to that answer. One of our core missions is how to love yourself in mind, body, and soul, and how to make that a non-negotiable. Like that's the core of your health and happiness. Loving yourself, meaning self-care, but like truly loving yourself in mind, in body, and soul. What does that mean? In mind, how do you think about yourself? How do you talk to yourself? How do you talk about yourself? What are the words that you're thinking and what are the words coming out of your mouth? In body, how do you treat your body? How do you move your body? What do you eat to put into your body? Soul, how do you live your life? How do you show up spiritually? How do you show up religiously? How do you show up non-religiously? How do you show up in your relationships, in your life, in your lifestyle, right? Like your true calling, your soul. That's the core of your health and happiness. So if you can really take that sort of mantra and say, well, if that equals health and happiness, and I want health and happiness, it's a no-brainer. It has to be a non-negotiable. Has to be. And self-care doesn't mean, oh, I need to go for a manicure. I need to go for a little 10-minute walk. Self-care equals loving yourself, like I said, in mind, body, soul. And then you break it down. What does that really mean, for you? What does that mean for you? And each individual, it will show up a little bit differently, what your core values are, what your core mind, body, soul experience is, but it will be similar in that that's the core of your health and happiness. That's your core value.
This is so beautiful. And I love how you define self-care. It's really being connected to your mind, body, and soul, right? It's being really aware of what's going on there on a daily basis and realigning it to loving and caring for yourself, right?
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. So if you can share your own self-care routine or how does it look like for you on the daily basis? I would love to hear that. And I can share mine.
It's funny, I have a routine, but it's not always the same. But I think the greater mentality of, moving my body, but not over moving, right? I used to be a very, over exerciser, over dieter, very much a disordered eater and body dysmorphia and that mentality that everything needs to be so perfect and so overdone. That's something I've grown out of. And so now, my self-care is I do things to make me feel good. I do things that will light me up. I do things that I enjoy. So finding ways and then it all stems from what are your core values? What are most important to you? So for me, my children are very important to me. So I intentionally have time that I spend with each of my children because that lights me up, right? I will spend time cuddling with this one or reading stories to this one and it's not, a lot of parents, I think, oh God, I have to take my kid to this thing, or I have to, it's a chore. I have to drive them here. I have to drop them off at soccer. I have to do their homework with them. No, like, let's look at it as an opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to spend 10 quality minutes with son, Joe, and I'm going to spend 15 quality minutes with my daughter, Betty, and it's mindful and it's intentional and it's quality and it's so amazing. Right. And so that's one of my values, right? Moving my body is a value, but I don't overdo it. It's important to me. So I've scheduled time in 2 or 3 out of mornings of my week. I know on Tuesdays where I'm going. I know on Friday which class I'm going to, right? I have a routine where I love my coffee in the morning. That's self-care for me. It makes me feel great. I love it. It's warm, it's hot, it's relaxing, it's kind. Even my showers can be self-care, right? I make sure I clean myself, but I also take that time to be alone, be quiet, to be in a hot, water, as much as I can, because I work in my own office, in my own space, and I am sitting. I will constantly be getting up, like, here we go, ready. I have a standing desk. Like, this is even self-care. Let me move my body. Let me stand up. Let me intentionally go outside for 10 minutes so I can get some vitamin D and some fresh air and some nature and some movement and walk and stretch. So, it really, again, and here's another thing. I am a bit of a people person. I'm more on the outgoing side. And I would say over the last few years, being in the online space, being in a home office where I work by myself in my own space without colleagues, right? Virtually, it's lonely. Self-care, right? So now I've come to this like recent realization, like, I need to collaborate. I need to network. I need to be with people again. So I've been sort of on this mission over the last 6 weeks or so, just reconnecting with people, reconnecting with women, reconnecting with friends, reconnecting with other business owners or other professionals, just building those relationships again where that lights me up. Right. So it's finding the things like, hey, what lights me up? What can I focus on? And as you notice, like, none of that makes me feel guilty. It makes me feel enlightened. It makes me feel embodied. It makes me feel really good. And it's also not at the disservice to anybody else in my life. We often think self-care is selfish and it means that I have to put somebody else second. I put my kids first. I put my husband first, but I also put me first. Right? There's not just one first. It's never at the disadvantage of other people. It just is also for me too, right? It's the things that light me up to make sure that I feel full and I feel happy.
Absolutely. This is so beautiful, Jessica. And I love how you say, you just got to be present with your kids, present with yourself, right? Present with your husband, understanding what makes you light up, what makes you, inspired, right? And really taking those steps. And you also mentioned non-negotiable. Like this is non-negotiable for you. You're prioritizing yourself, self-care, and when you're present with your kids and when your husband, you're also prioritizing them. So it's a win-win for everyone, right? It's this presence and awareness and conscious intention to be there for them and be there for you, right? And it's a balance. Like you got to be balancing all those things. It's a process, but you can learn it.
Conscious intention, so key, right? Because if it's not conscious, right? If it's not intentional, that means it's mindless. That means you've stepped out. That means you've disembodied, you've checked out, you've sort of, and that's where we have eating, like in my field, right? That's where eating behaviors come into play. You check out, we end up emotionally eating, binge eating, not paying attention to what you're eating. You're not making time for your walk, or you're not making time. You use excuses. When you check out, excuses come in and, oh, I don't have the time. Oh, I don't have this. Oh, I can't do this. And a lot of excuses come into play when you check out. So that consciousness, that level of presence, that level of awareness, being here, being in the moment, being really like conscious, that's the best word really for it, allows you to not yet let those excuses come into play.
Yeah.
So I love that
Being
word.
honest with yourself, right? And being present with yourself and understanding, okay, this is an excuse. Is it working for me? No. Can I like shift it? Can I choose something? It's being super present and honest and always choosing, what aligns with you and with your vision and with your goals. Beautiful. Now, I also know, and I'm part of this as well. So when we actually create time for like our own self-care, even if it's like going out for a walk or, booking a massage, we're there, but mentally we're somewhere else. So it's not really working for us. It's not really quality time that nurtures us and actually gives us energy, right? How do you shift that? How do you stay actually present during self-care moments?
That's a good question, and it's hard. I think, it takes practice sometimes.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I think just giving yourself grace that it's just not the day, right? You may just have 1,000 things on in your head, and that's okay, because a little bit of that break, actually, even if you're thinking about 1,000 things, that little break actually does have a healing effect. You may not think it in the moment because your mind is going, spinning around like a chicken with their head cut off, but that little break is helpful. And every little break, every little bit of practice to implement the self-care will actually make each of those times a little bit easier. So it's not necessarily, oh my God, I have to like not think about all these things. Even when you practice something like meditation, the point of meditation isn't to force the thoughts out. The point of meditation is actually to let the thoughts in and actually accept the thought, but refocus yourself back to your breath. Oh, okay. I see the thought. It's coming. It's moving. We're not trying to repress the thought. We're not trying to push the thought back out. A lot of people who are so high achieving and high busy, very like, super women, right? It's like, oh, I could never sit down and meditate because I just can't shut my thoughts off. You don't want to shut your thoughts off. You just want to sit and focus on your breath and let the thoughts come. And let the thoughts pass, and let the thoughts come, and let the thoughts pass. And that's okay. And each, even when we're going to do relaxing things for ourselves, just being there is calming to some degree. So if you can just accept that and know that each time you practice it, it does get a little bit easier, it's okay.
I love that. It's okay. It's just being that silent observer, seeing those thoughts and then you can let them go, you can stay with them. I've come to realize that all those thoughts, you can actually choose how you see them. You can see them as just like pure energy, and we only give meaning to that energy. So when you like deconstruct the meaning, there's nothing, there's nothingness in the thoughts, right? So you are not even attached to anything, right? It's the meaning that we give to it. So if you take that meaning and just like let it go, it's nothing. But then also you can actually ask those thoughts, right? Like what's the meaning behind, like why are they bothering me? What's the message behind it? Maybe there's some kind of lesson for me to learn. So I see them as meaningful, as not something bothering me, right? You can choose how you even see those thoughts. There are different ways how you perceive them in your mind, right? You can take them as opportunities to learn more about yourself, or you can take them as nothingness and just disattach the meaning and let them go. There's so many different ways to actually work with your thoughts. It's like
Yeah.
fascinating,
And your thoughts then control how you show up and how they control your behavior. So it is important to work on how your thoughts create meaning for you and how they might not.
Yeah, it's fascinating, once you start kind of, digging deeper into what's going on in your head and your thoughts. And then you realize that you are the creator. You can choose how you want to experience your thoughts, your behaviors, your actions or non-actions, right? Once you step into that power of that conscious creator, you can do whatever you want to do, right? You can create whatever you want to create in your life. You can experience whatever you want to experience, right? Once you step into that power. Beautiful.
100%.
Well, what mistakes entrepreneurs should avoid when it comes to self-care? Maybe there is some kind of, mistaken beliefs about it that they should, some common stuff that they should have. Is anything that you want to warn them about?
Don't should yourself into self-care. So a lot of people are like, well, I should move my body, or I should do this, or I should do that, right? I really want to just go back to that like core mantra that I mentioned before. If you can look at, instead of shoulding yourself, right? Because that's just a rule, and that's just a rule that's probably not even a real rule or an attainable rule anyway. If you can go back and say, hey, how can I love myself in mind, body, and soul and make that a non-negotiable in my life? What action steps can I take this week? What action step can I take today? What's one thing I can do today that actually will allow me to love myself in mind, body, and or soul? That's good. That's a good step. That's good enough. That is the right path that we need to be on. Instead of creating rules and regulations and things that we should or shouldn't do, and then if we do or do not do them, we end up in a place of, self-beratement or guilt or self-hate and shame. So let's live from a place of more empowerment where, okay, how can I positively love myself in mind, body, and or soul, as opposed to following some sort of arbitrary rule or system that you didn't even create in the first place.
This is so powerful, Jessica. Making loving yourself non-negotiable, right? Making self-love, self-care non-negotiable. I love that. One of my favorite questions that I ask myself when I was like on this journey of healing and realizing what self-love is, because I had no idea what that means, was this question. Maybe it's going to be very helpful for people watching this. I usually ask very often ask myself, what would the person who truly loved themselves do right now? Like truly love themselves do right now? And all of a sudden you're just like, wow, yeah, I wouldn't do this on autopilot anymore. I would just pause and tune in and connect to myself, right? And just see what really resonates and aligns with me right now, with my mind, body, and soul. So yeah, making self-love non-negotiable. It's key.
I'll piggyback off of that. If you're a parent, okay, what would you tell or say or do to your small child?
Mm.
You're not gonna, right? So many people look in the mirror, oh, you're fat, you're ugly. Like oh, you have to go on a diet, right? Like tell themselves this, right? You have to, you're this, you're that. Would you tell your son that? Your 5-year-old son that? Would you tell your daughter that? And I think that's really resonant because no, of course you wouldn't. You would treat your kids with kindness. You would treat your kids, right? Like your kid, I don't know, they're learning how to write or read for the first time and they're practicing and they mess up and they make their D's, B's and their upside down threes. And do you shame them because they made a mistake? They're learning. And supporting and loving and being kind in that learning process is the same exact way one should treat themselves. Supportive, kindness, it's a process, a lot of grace in the process, giving it right. So if you're like, okay, well, I don't know, maybe you're saying, I don't know how to love myself. I can't love myself. Okay, well, take yourself out of the situation for a second. How would you treat your kid? How would you treat a small child? That's a really good start if you really can't resonate with like, oh, I just don't have this deep love for myself. You don't have to have a deep love for yourself. It's again, how are you treating yourself up here in your mind, in your body, the way that you move, the way that you eat, the way that you are in your body? How do you embody? and the way that you are living your life on a day-to-day basis in your soul, like, how do you actually carry that on? How positive is it for you? Right. So I think that's a sort of just a piggyback of a question that you could ask yourself as well. You know, what would you say to a small child?
It's a beautiful analogy. I love it. Yeah. It puts everything in
I have
perspective.
3 kids, so it's very relevant to me. So it's like I couldn't, you know, it's like, what would you say? What would I say to my kids? Right.
Absolutely. Jessica, that was amazing. Thank you so much. How can people work with you? How can you support them on their journeys? Could you please share?
Yeah. So you can, my website is lowyowellness.com. So low yo, love yourself, right? Love yourself, lowyowellness.com. You can, there's some really great free resources on that front page of my website. One is a mini course where you're letting go of your dieting mindset. And one's an emotional eating toolkit. And I really think both could resonate in this greater space of mind, body, soul anyway, right? It's helping you say goodbye to habits that don't serve you and how to incorporate more positive habits in your life. So I would definitely go to loyowellness.com and check that out. You could follow me on Instagram at Jessica Kishpa Coaching, on Facebook at Jessica Kishpa Coaching as well. There's lots of ways you can reach out to me, phone, email as well. And you can find that all on my website, loyowellness.com.
Amazing, Jessica. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. That was amazing. So many golden nuggets I am personally taking. Like I took some notes. I love them so much. Thank you. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thanks for this opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you so much. And everyone, I will see you in the next video. Bye.